let me just introduce in a second Talia, who's going to be on. But before I just say hi to her, Talia's actually a manager in our Sydney team, and she has a background in accounting and is passionate about identifying opportunities for process improvements, analysing data to gain insights, and solving complicated Excel problems. Now, she's provided consulting solutions for clients from various industries to help with automating processes. She's been building financial and data models, transforming and visualizing data using various tools such as advanced Microsoft Excel, Power BI, and Power Automate. In addition, Talia actually writes several blogs about Power BI, Power Pivot, and is mainly the one in charge of the final Friday fix and Monday morning mulling, if you've seen those on our website. That's the Excel challenges to have a go at over the weekends on our Some Product website, where she covers Power BI and Excel functions, as well as problems encountered with building financial models, reports, and dealing with raw data. So let's just put for a second, Talia, I know the video is quite long. Let me just put you on there, but I just thought you might want to say hi and sort of introduce it yourself. And it gives me a second as well to actually queue it up. But welcome.
Thanks, Liam, for introducing me. That's a very informative one. I have been preparing the solutions for the two problems for my presentation, so hope you will enjoy it.
Now, thank you, Talia. We will be putting that up very, very shortly now. I'm just queuing it up as we speak. So if you're all sitting comfortably, it's our penultimate session now that we're going to have with Talia, who's going to be looking again at how Excel and ChatGPT can work together to actually sort out your problems in Excel. If only I could do it in my life as well. Right, cue Telecine. Let's get it on the live channel. Thanks, Talia.
Thank you, Dan.
Hi everyone, welcome to Excel Global. Thank you for joining this session. My name is Talia. You can call me Talia. I'm from Vietnam and currently located in Sydney, Australia. I'm a manager of Some Product, the organizers of this conference. My job is similar to a business intelligence or management consultant who provides clients from various industries with consulting solutions, such as building financial and operational models, creating reports and dashboards, automating processes, and managing projects. I mainly use tools such as Excel, Power BI, and Power Automate. A bit about myself. My background is in accounting. I'm passionate about identifying opportunities for process improvements and finding insights from data. I'm also curious about the underlying causes of problems around me, so I like dealing with complicated challenges in Power BI. Therefore, I'm responsible for the Final Friday Fix and Monday Morning Mulling blog series on Some Product website, where I and my team cover Excel challenges on the last Friday of every month. In this session, I'm going to show you how I usually deal with difficult problems with Excel and ChatGPT. So stay tuned.
My topic today is solving problems with modern Excel and ChatGPT. Modern Excel here is about all the new functions and features that Microsoft has introduced in the last decade, such as Power Query, dynamic arrays, list and lambda. They have provided us opportunities to address lots of complex problems. This session will be a bit advanced and require you to know the basics of how those tools work. But don't worry, I will usually start with simple examples first, before diving into more complex ones. Feel free to contact me via my LinkedIn or email. If you have any questions, please leave them in the Q&A box. I will answer them at the end of the session. Also, I would like to know your experience in using Excel to solve your own everyday challenges. I'm going to start with my general approach to a problem. There are 4 main steps. Firstly, break the problem down into smaller steps. Sometimes a problem can be very complicated. When you break it down into smaller parts, it will be easier to define and solve. Secondly, identify which Excel functions and features to apply in each step. Different steps may need different tools to apply to achieve the best result. Each tool has its own pros and cons. I will mention them in the next slide. Thirdly, brainstorm your solutions. The best way to improve your problem-solving skills is to practice. The more you deal with problems, the faster you can solve the next ones, as you may gain experience from other or similar problems. And finally, ask ChatGPT to find another solution or optimize yours. Your solutions sometimes are not the best, as they are restricted by your knowledge and experience. ChatGPT is a good friend to help you find a better approach or enhance your own solutions. So here are the 4 steps that I usually use. If you have a different approach, please let me know in the chat box. Next, I will explain some tools that I will use in this presentation as well as in real life. The first tool is GoSeek. This helps you find value of an input cell so the output cell can reach a specified target. On the other hand, Solver is an Excel add-in that allows you to change multiple variable inputs based on different constraints to optimize a target. I will talk more about them in the first problem later. Secondly, the most crucial tools that everyone should know are Excel functions, such as sum, if, count, especially the newly released dynamic arrays. They allow you to do analysis and deal with data cleansing and transformation without using Power Query. Thirdly, VBA is a tool for people who like to write code to interact with Excel and other apps. Although it is not easy to understand by the beginner, it's a good programming language to learn to improve your ability of automating tasks. Next, you can consider using Power Query, that is the Get and Transform Data tool under Data tab. It helps you deal with large amount of data and automate the ETL or extract, transform, and load processes. For example, it can combine multiple external files together, clean them, and conduct analysis based on more than 10 million rows of data with pivot table. Similar to pivot table, you will need to click refresh to refresh queries after source data is updated. Another tool that is a bit advanced is LAMBDA function. It is a powerful tool that allows you to define a function before specifying any variable values. You can even create loops within LAMBDA to perform complex calculations such as Fibonacci or factorial. I will give some examples in the next part. And finally, a tool that is not within Excel but can help you improve your Excel skills a lot is ChatGPT. For beginners, it can provide detailed explanation and examples to many basic questions of how to learn a specific Excel functions and features. For intermediate and advanced people, ChatGPT can assist with solving more complex problems. However, we need to be conscious about the weaknesses of ChatGPT. It only summarizes what it has learned from the past, but doesn't think like human. So sometimes it can give us fake information about Excel. I will show some examples later. Here are just the tools I will use in the next examples. In real life, there are many more useful Excel functions and features you can apply to solve problems, depending on different cases. Now, let's come to the first problem. Problem A, solving algebraic equations. Here I'm talking about the functions that have only one variable, like the ones shown on the screen. There are many solutions to this problem. You can choose to use a calculator, but I will show you how to find roots of the functions in Excel. Let's move on to the first and easiest solution, that is using GoSeek or Solver. Before continuing, I'm going to talk a little bit about the structure of this Excel model. Firstly, I use different cell styles within this model to distinguish between different functionalities of different cells. For example, yellow means it is an assumption cell. You can input anything within these cells. Blue means it is a parameter. Gray means it is internal reference, etc. Next, I use different grouping in this model. So for example, if I click number 1, it will show the highest grouping level. If I click number 2, it will show the next level 2. You can also use the plus or minus symbol to expand or group the section. Next one, I use formula text to show the formula of the cell next to it so that you can follow me when I'm talking about something. This is the function example that I will use for this problem. Now I'm going to find x so that this function will be equal 0. In the first solution, GoSeek or Solver, just a few clicks in Excel, you can quickly find the result of this function. Firstly, I will use GoSeek. I will remove this result first and then type in any guess value. So I will guess number 3 here. And then under Data tab and What If Analysis, I click GoSeek. I will set cells E17 to 0 by changing cell E16 and I click OK. And here is the result. This number means it is very small number close to 0. It seems to be a correct result. Next, let's see if Solver is better. I will remove this result now and then go to Data tab and Solver. If you cannot find it under Data tab, you will need to turn it on in the option setting. So under File tab, Options, Add-ins, you need to select Excel Add-ins under this drop down and click Go and tick Solver Add-in. Click OK. Now you will find solver button here. I click solver. I want to set E17 to 0 by changing cell E16. Solver allows you to choose among different algorithms here. And then I click solve. It will show us this dialog. You just need to click OK to keep the result. However, both Glossic and solver require us to use many manual clicks to activate them. We can choose to use VBA to interact with them, but it will be more complicated. The challenge here is to use only Excel functions. So when I change the function here, it will generate the result immediately. The next solution is brute force method. My first approach to this problem is trial and error, which is fitting into the function loss of values of x until it reaches 0. This requires me to create many loops to find the closest root, so I will need to use recursive lambda. Before talking about this solution, I will explain a little bit about let lambda and recursive lambda for anyone who hasn't used them before. Firstly, I will talk about let function. This function allows you to store intermediate calculations, values, or defining names inside a formula. If you reuse the same expression multiple times in a formula, let allows you to name the expressions and refer to it using that name within the calculation argument. So the syntax here includes one or multiple pairs of name and values, and a calculation in the last argument. So for example here, I will use let to first declare the values of variable x and y, and then apply the calculation of x plus y. So the formula here would be equal let x and then the value of x, y, and the value of y, and finally the calculation using x and y, and this is the result. And before I talk about lambda, I will introduce you to an add-in that allows you to write long formula better in Excel. So you just need to go to Home tab. Under add-ins, you click Get add-ins and search for Excel Lab. This is the add-ins that I'm talking about, so you just need to click Add and continue. It will open a panel here called Advanced Formula Environment. I will click this one, open. And now we can start writing long formula in this pane. The next one is lambda. Lambda allows you to define a custom function in Excel formula language. Then you can call it later and assign the value to the parameters. The syntax includes one or multiple parameters and then a calculation in the last argument. So for example, here I will write formula of lambda. Lambda x and y are the parameters for this calculation, and then my calculation x plus y. When I click save here, it will show an error because we haven't declared any value for x and y, so it doesn't know how to calculate. So after this formula, I will add open bracket, and then I will assign a value for x, which is this cell, and then y, and then close bracket. And when I hit enter, it now can calculate the value of x plus y. You can also name this part of the formula within a name range so that you can call this lambda function as a normal function in Excel. Under formula name manager, I have already named it as lambda example with this syntax. So now I can replace this part with lambda example. As you can see, on the tooltip, it also shows you what are the parameters that I need to put in this function. So when I hit enter, it will return the result for x plus y. And then the second example is the Pythagoras example. So in this example, similarly, I will type in the lambda function here. I declare all of the variables that I will need to use in this function, which are x and y. And here I will use let in combination with lambda. So let, I would like to calculate x squared, which is x to the power of 2, and then y squared, which is y to the power of 2. And then I would like to calculate the square root of x squared plus y squared. So this is my lambda function. When I hit save, it will return a code error. I need to assign a value to x and y, so I will select x and y value and then hit enter. Now it will return the result for me here. Next, let's come to recursive lambda. For recursive lambda, I will take an example to calculate factorial of number 5. In Excel, we have a function called fact. We can use this to calculate the factorial. So it's just the result of 1 multiplied with 2 multiplied with 3 times 4 times 5 to get this 120. To write recursive lambda, we have two different structures. The first one is name range. So this is the structure of recursive lambda. Basically, you just need to name this function as a name, in this case my lambda, and then call it within itself my lambda here. And you will need to have a condition to stop the loop, and then a value of truth when you stop the loop. And if the condition is false, you can continue to loop. And the example here is this factorial example. I have already written the formula for factorial. So basically, if n is less than 2, it will return the result of 1. Otherwise, it will calculate n times factorial of n minus 1. I will name this one, put this one in the name range called factorial. So I have already created a name range for factorial here. And here I just simply write the formula called factorial and then select the value of n, hit enter, and it will calculate n factorial here for me. The second structure is the me techniques. You can read more about it in this blog written by Liam, who is the director of the sum product. The second structure will ask you to have a parameter for the function. For example, I will call it me in this case, so that I can call it later in the loop. And similar to the first structure, I also have a condition to stop the loop, and then a value to return when the loop is stopped. And then if the condition is false, I will call the current function here, fx variable here, within itself. And next, in the calculation argument of let function, I will apply the parameters to the function created above. And here's the example. I will type in the function within Excel Lab. So I come back to Home tab, Excel Lab, to open the Excel Advanced Formula environment. I type formula let. I call it factorial2 lambda me as a parameter, and if n smaller than 2, then return 1, otherwise return n times me, open bracket, me, n minus 1. This is the code of the formula itself. As this lambda needs 2 arguments, so I need to declare 2 arguments here. And then I apply the parameter to the function above. So it will be factorial2, open bracket, factorial2, and then the value of n in cell E8. Okay, now hit save. Here, it will return the value here for me. I will mainly use structure 2 of recursive lambda in this presentation to avoid creating many name ranges. Okay, now you have a bit knowledge about these functions. We can come back to our current problem. Remember the first step that I mentioned in my general approach slide. Let's break the problem down. We don't want it to loop forever when the root is an irrational number, right? So I have an input here called rounding accuracy for the number of decimal places you need for the solution. Next, we need a function that allows us to fit multiple values of x. Therefore, I choose the normal lambda function, which basically does this job. To create multiple values of x, I use sequence. However, this function only allows up to 2 to the power of 20 rows or columns. If the root has many decimal places, we won't have enough values from sequence to check. That's why we need to use loop to find from the wider to narrower ranges. In order to find the closest x that fx will return a 0, I will need a lookup function to find 0 from a list of fx results. I choose xlookup in this case due to its flexibility. Next, I will talk about the skeleton of this calculation, which is the recursive lambda. I will reopen the Excel lab on the Home tab, Excel lab, and then I will copy and paste the structure of recursive lambda here. Then I name this function as solver brute force. As this function will be a lambda function, so I will start with lambda. And the variable I need for this function includes first the lambda formula, and next a parameters for routing accuracy, as I don't want people to always have to input this parameter, so I will put it in the square brackets to say that it is an optional parameter. Next, this will be my main calculation. As the running accuracy is an optional parameter, so I will need to specify a value for it in case it is omitted. So there's a function in Lambda code is omitted. Rounding accuracy. Then I will round it to 15 decimal places, which is the highest limitation of Excel. Otherwise, just return the rounding underscore accuracy. My function here will include me as the first parameter, and another parameter is solution. Before I have an if statement here, I would like to do some more calculation before that, so I will use a let function. As this solution is also an optional parameter, so I also use is omitted to specify the first guess of the solution. Is omitted solution. My first guess is 0. Otherwise, return solution. Next, I would like to calculate the number of decimal places of my solution. So I call it len text. It will be len and then text after x. The delimiters will be dot. And then I don't want it to return an error when there's no decimal places, so I will return blank. Now let's come to the condition to stop the recursion. My conditions will include two parts. So I will have a function R here. First is lambda formulas. If I use the value of x in the lambda formula and it gives me 0, then I will stop the recursion. Or if the length of the solution is higher or equal than the rounding accuracy and the solution is not omitted, then I will also return this result, and my result will be round of x to r decimal places. Before I come to the main loops, I would like to create a list of x values to fit in the function. So I call it range count if is omitted solution. So in the first loop, the solution will be omitted. So I will fit in the maximum capability of the subsequent function, that is 2 to the power of 20. Otherwise, in the next loop, I will just fit in 10 values. Okay. Now let's come to the main calculation here under me. As I mentioned previously, I will use lookup here to find 0. I will close bracket here to avoid the red alert. I will find 0 from a list of fx result. So my list of x value will be based on the range count. And the starting values is x multiplied with 10 to the power of lambda plus 1. I will put it ends now to make it bigger. And then I divide it by maximum of 100 because I want the first loop to always have 2 decimal places. And the next loop will just be 10 to the power of lambda plus 1. And then I will find the value of fx, find 0 from the value of fx, and return the corresponding x. If it's not found, I will return an error. So I choose the square root of -1. This will return a hashnum error. And then match mode will be -1, which is exact match on next smaller item. And the search mode is 1 to search from first to last. And then here in the calculation part of the let function, I just call this function, and there's only one argument here in this function. Okay, the function seems to be completed now. I will save it. And then let's test it. Here, as you can see here, I have already created a name range for this lambda function so that later on I can use this lambda to fit in the multiple values of x. So this is the name range that I have created. Now in my folder here, I just need to type equal solver brute force, and then I use the name range here, and then simply enter. You can see it works now. If I type in this formula here, instead of using the name range, it will also work. So for example, I type this one, close bracket. It will still work. And if I refer this to the variable input I have created above, and then I change this variable input to a different number, x will return a different result. As you can see, it returns the result immediately. So that's how this function works. On the right hand side, when you expand this one, I have already included the function here and my notes here so that you can have a look at it. I will test to see what will happen if I use the second argument for rounding accuracy. I will refer to the rounding underscore accuracy input here. As you can see, the number of decimal places is 10, and this result is close to 0, which means this solution is correct. If I change it to 5, it's still correct. As that method is brute force, there should be a faster way to find the root, so I asked ChatGPT if it knows a better approach. Here is answer. So this is my questions. How can I write a code that can efficiently find a solution to an univariate algebraic equations? And ChatGPT give me a list of all of the methods that I can use here. My first ChatGPT tips for you is to ask it to use a tool that you are familiar with. In this case, it seems that I need a programming language to solve, so I choose VBA as it is easier for me to understand and debug errors. So this is the VBA solution. Then I asked it to show LAMBDA solution to see if it can provide me a correct solution. It seems that ChatGPT creates a fake function in Excel to deal with my problem, which is CVR. This function only exists in VBA, not Excel function. Although how many times I asked ChatGPT to double check, it seems to not figure out the issue. It still gives me a solution with CVR function. After reading its answers in both VBA and LAMBDA, I got its ideas, so I'm gonna clean it up a little bit. The third solution is Newton method. The general idea here is that the intersect of the tangent line at the first guess with the x-axis will be the better approximation of the root. We can use loops with lambda to keep finding the closest solution. The function of the tangent line is the derivative of fx, or a measure of how fx changes as x changes. Here is the lambda function that I have written. This lambda function has 4 parameters. The lambda formula similar to the second solution, an optional parameters for guess, and then tolerance and max iteration. Similarly, because these are optional parameters, I have to declare the value in case they are omitted. So for my first guess, I will guess number 1. My starting tolerance is 1/10 to the power of 10. This is just a very small number close to 0. My default maximum iteration is 100. And this is the formula for derivative function. This is a lambda function with 2 arguments, f function and the x value. So it is equal to the changes in fx over the changes in x. And this is my main recursive lambda. It has 3 arguments, me, solution, and iteration. And I have to declare the default value if these 2 parameters are omitted. The solution, the first default value of the solution will be my first guess, which is this one. And then my default iteration, the first iteration is number 1. This is the condition to exit the loop. That is the absolute value of the lambda formula at x less than or equal to the tolerance value, which is this one. Then I will return x. Otherwise, I will check if the number of iteration up to now is higher than the maximum iteration. If it's true, then I return a hashnum error. Otherwise, I call itself to recursive. So according to these formulas, my next better approximations will be equal to my previous guess minus the fx and divided by the derivative of fx. And then I increase the number of iterations by 1. And finally, I call the function. Let's see how it works. So I save. And then here I type equal server Newton and my lambda fx name range. It seems to work pretty well. So that is a much more efficient solution that ChatGPT gave us. In real life, you can have a complex calculations based on a single variable x and need to find x so that your calculation reaches a target. For example, your taxable income is x and tax paid or refund is fx. You may need to find the taxable income that allows you to pay or be refunded a target amount of tax. The 3 solutions that I have just discussed will be useful for you. Now let's come to the second problem. Problem B, finding combinations of numbers that add up to a target. When you look at the picture here, you can find lots of possible combinations that add up to 5 kg of the bags, such as 2 kg of bananas and 3 kg of oranges, or 4 kg of apples and 1 kg of grapes, or 1 kg of grapes, 1 kg of bread, and 3 kg of oranges, etc. This problem has many real-world applications. The first one is in daily life, you may have problems to solve with the shopping cart, study travel backpack, task allocations. In operations, you may need to allocate boxes into pallets. In accounting, you may need to match invoices with a lump sum payment. Or in finance, you will need to select from different investments and portfolios, etc. The complicated part here is that the more items we have, the more combinations of them we need to calculate the sum. To remind you the math calculations we learned in the high school, if n is the number of items, the total number of their combinations is 2 to the power of n, as each item can be either included or excluded from a combination. We can deduct one from it if we don't want to include the case where there is no number existing in the combination. As we need to consider whether to include each item or not, I thought of using the first method called binary method, which is the use of 1 to include and 0 to exclude items. Again, we need to break this problem into multiple smaller steps.
This is an example that I have prepared for this problem. So I have 26 items here in this list, and they have the value of the random number from 1 to 30. My target is 10, and I have a calculation here for the number of inputs, which is the number of rows within this table, and the number of outputs here. If I turn the switch on, it will generate all of the combination that sum up to this target. If I turn it off, it just shows NA. Okay, now let's come back to this first solution, binary method. For now, I just use 10 inputs so that I can show you the outputs of all of my calculation. Step 1, as I mentioned, to calculate the numbers of all combinations of these 10 inputs. So I will use sequence and to the power of. I have a name range for these cells as count_numbers. I want to exclude a combination that is no item existing in the list. So I -1 from here. So that means this list includes number 1 from number 1023. Next, I convert this number into the binary numbers that includes only 0 and 1. So here I have two choices. I can either use text to binary and then select this range, but we return an error because text binaries only works with up to 2 power of 9 minus 1. So that means I have to use my second method, that is using the base function. This function allows me to convert the decimal numbers into binary numbers based on the radius of 2. In the range, I want to show all leading 0. So this one will be this cell. And then I want to split this series numbers into different columns. So that means I will need to use move function. And this array, the sequence, I want to return this number of columns and extract 1 character for each column. It gives me this number now in text format, so I want to convert them into number by adding 2 minus signs at the beginning. Next, let's come to step 2. So I want to have all the values flowing across all columns, so I want to transform my values column here. So I have a list of values here. And then I want to convert this matrix of 1 and 0 into a matrix of this value. So I will use an if function. If this matrix, then return this value, otherwise return 0. If will always return true when the number is not 0. So whenever there's 1, it will return a value, otherwise just return 0. So as you can see here, these numbers are 1, that's why they return 11 here. And then I want to calculate the total of each row. You can choose to use by row and then lambda sum of each row, but I will use a different method to calculate the sum. I will use moment. The moment function is just the multiplication of 2 matrices. So my first matrix is this matrix, and my second matrix is this value list. So this is the total of each row, so we can double check. So this row, the total is 14, that's correct. This row, the total is 30, that's correct. Okay, next step, I just need to filter this matrix based on this total columns. I want this total column to match with my target of 10 here. So let me do a filter. This row total equal cells. I have already named it as target. So this is the result. These are all the combinations that I need. And I want to remove all 0 and combine them by the common delimiters. So I will use by row function is array, and then lambda for row text join function to join text by the comma delimiters, comma space. True, I want to ignore the empty cell, and then I want to do filter to filter out all 0. Okay, so this is my result. Although we have many steps here, when I combine them all together, you will see this formula. So they are just list down all the steps that I have just done. So this lambda has 3 parameters: values, target, and names. So in order, right now, it is returning the values. In order to change them into the name of the item, like ABCD, I will change this formula to name instead of item instead of value. So when you look at the output, so this is this output. And here you just need to turn it on to apply the formula, or turn it off. So I will turn it on, and then I will expand this table to 20 numbers. And you can see this is the result of 20 numbers. But if I increase one more numbers, it will show an error. This is the limitation of this method, so I will show you the notes here. A drawback of this solution is that it can only deal with up to 20 numbers due to the limitation of sequence function. As I mentioned before, sequence can only work with up to 2 to the power of 20. That's why we can only deal with 20 numbers in this case. And when you look at this method, it's a bit slow, as it has to check all combinations to compare with the target. That's why I asked ChatGPT to see if it can give me a better solution. So now let's come to the second method. This time I asked for a power query solution, as I thought it would need to deal with a large number of combinations, and power query is good at this. So this is the question I asked ChatGPT. Here's a list of 25 random decimal numbers and a given target number. Please find a way to generate whole combinations of numbers that sum up to the target. It gave me a solution in Python, and then I asked it to provide me the solution in Power Query, and this is the solution here. ChatGPT is pretty good at providing me the base solution in MCOS, except for the fact that Power Query keeps showing me an error. So there's an error called expression.errors. The name font combinations wasn't recognized. Make sure it's spelled correctly. So this is the part that it shows an error. Despite how many times I asked ChatGPT, it couldn't identify the errors. Based on my knowledge of the encodes, I had to fix it myself. That's why we need human expertise here. It may be tricky to find errors if you are just a Power Query beginner. The main cause of the issues here is the loop. Power Query tries to alert that it cannot find the function name. We need to use add symbol here to notify Power Query that we are asking the function to call itself. Not only this error, but I also had to add a few steps to make sure the code can deal with items with the same value. When I asked ChatGPT to explain this method and give me some examples of the first iteration, it kept giving me wrong examples, although I pointed out its errors multiple times. Before diving deeper into game language, I will show an example of how this method works and why it is better than the binary method. Here's an example for this solution. I have a list of three numbers 3, 1, 2, and a target of 4. And this is my final encode. List.accumulate function just generates a loop, so it requires me to have a starting list and then a starting value of the accumulator. Next, I need to have 2 parameters, one for accumulator and one for the current value. Then the record field of value will be calculated based on this calculation. And in this calculation, I break it down into multiple steps. So first I calculate a new sum, which is equal to the current sum, plus the current numbers. The current numbers is the current value of this list. And my new combination is just to adding the current numbers into the current combination list. And my new remaining list will be the current remaining list and remove some of the first item. And my results will be this condition. I first compare between the new sum with the target numbers. If they are equal to each other, I will combine the new combination to the accumulator list. Otherwise, if the new sum is less than the target numbers, I will call this function again. This function is called combine numbers. So the S symbol here means that this function is calling itself and create a subloop with all these parameters. And if these two conditions are not matched, I will return the accumulator, the old accumulator. And then I increase the index by 1 and then come back to the next loop. So my first iteration will be my current value is number 3, the first number, and my index number is number 1, is because the position is position 1. And my new sum will be 0 as the current sum is 0, plus 3 of the current value equal 3. My new combination is 3, and my new list is just the next two numbers, because I have already removed 3 from this list. Because the new sum is less than 4, I will need to start a subloop. So my iteration 1.1, my current value will be number 1 here from this remaining list. Index is still number 1 of this because it's equal to this index. And my index 1 is equal 1 because this is the first numbers in this list. My new sum will be equal to 3 plus 1, which is this number plus current number here, and equal to 4. So I have the first combination here for the accumulator. Then I come to iteration 1.2. The current value here is number 2, and the index here is number 2 because it's in position 2. And my new sum is this number 3 plus the current value of 2 equal 5. This new sum is higher than 4. That means I will exit the loop and I return the previous accumulator. I will come to the second iteration. So now my current number is number 1 from this list. The index position is number 2. My new sum will be 0 plus current value 1 less than 4. This means I will need to start a next subloop. Iteration 2.1. My subloop will start from value 2 because I only have the remaining value of number 2 here because I have already removed the first two values. And my new sum will be 1 here plus 2 equal 3 less than 4. However, my remaining list is empty, so I will end up the subloop here and I return the previous combination here. Next, come to the iteration 3. My current number is 2, which is the third number here. And then my new sum is 0 plus 2 equal 2 and less than 4. My remaining list is empty, so I will end the loop here. And then I will just return the previous combination that I just found. And here is the combination that is summed up to number 4. So therefore, I have the total of 6 iterations, which is less than 2 to the power 3 minus 1 equals 7 checks in the binary method. That's why this method is much faster than the binary method. These are all the queries that I have created. The first query is just from the name range target value within this workbook, and then I change type value to decimal numbers, and then extract value from that cell. And this is my main function, which is the function I showed on the slide previously. And next is my main query output. So this is just the table of all items from the workbook. And then I extract the list of all values and apply the functions. These are all the 4 parameters that I use for this function. And then I just combine all numbers together. First, I transform the numbers to text, and then I combine all numbers of these lists together with these comma delimiters. And here's my list. And then I just load it into this workbook. Now, this method can deal with more than 20 items. But we need to click refresh every time the list of the item changes, which I don't really like. And it also have another drawback. This can only work with the positive value because whenever there's a negative value, it will decrease the new sum. And in this method, we will skip the loops whenever the new sum is higher than target. So that's why it doesn't work with negative number. If you have negative numbers, you will need to sort the list from lowest to highest to make sure all of the negative numbers are adding up together before they add with the positive number to increase their new sum. Next, let's come to the third method. Based on my knowledge, most of these power query functions can be replaced by Excel functions. And based on many tests, I know that ChatGPT is not good at recursive LAMBDA, so I had to go to rewrite it in formulas myself. We have the third solution called recursive LAMBDA, as it is the main body of this solution. Here is the formula I have written in recursive LAMBDA. You can have a go and try to understand it yourself. I have listed down all the power query equivalence function here. So for example, this step accumulate is similar to reduce function in Excel. And in order to add current sum to current numbers, I have this function. And then I use text join to join instead of joining list because in Excel it's no list. And I use drop function to replace list dot remove first n. And then I use vstack to replace the list combination here. And here is the recursive LAMBDA to replace the add symbol combine numbers function. And finally, I just call the function here. Feel free to have a look at this formula and try it yourself. So when I turn it on, it will generate this combination. And then when I expand this list to the whole 26 numbers, these are all the combination. As you can see, this method is pretty quick. It's very fast. The only limitation is just that we need this value to be positive, or the list of value need to sort from negative to positive. After using ChatGPT, we can see that ChatGPT is a good tool to provide us a good solution to any common problems it can find on the internet, and it has learned from various sources in other programming languages. If your problem is too complicated to us, you can break it down into smaller problems or provide ChatGPT more details. However, we need humans to identify the errors when ChatGPT translates those solutions into Excel. Please also be careful, as ChatGPT can create a fake Excel function or features, and it would reward us as if that function or feature really exists. So I have explained to you 2 problem examples and lots of solutions in Excel. The purpose of this presentation is to give you some ideas of using different tools in Excel to deal with your own problems. To summarize, I have a table here outlining what I have mentioned in this session. So we have gone through my general problem-solving approach with 4 steps. The 2 problems, algebraic equations and sum to target, and their solution with the help of various tools. If you want to practice your problem-solving skills, here are some resources for you. As I mentioned when I introducing myself at the beginning of this presentation, I'm in charge of the Excel challenge blog series of some product Excel called Final Friday Fix and Monday Morning blog series. There is a new blog on every final Friday of every month. You can follow it to practice. Try to solve some challenges in the past while waiting for the next blogs this month. The next sources are Excel communities such as Reddit or Discord. If you help people solve their problems, you will improve your Excel skills significantly. And of course, the last source that I will mention here is Google. Whenever I have any problem, I usually Google to see if there's any similar one that someone has already solved. When Googling, it's important to use good keywords to get the results that you need. Thank you for joining this session. Hope you find something useful from it. I'm Talia CAO. If you have any questions or feedback, please leave them in the Q&A box and provide me some feedback via survey on the screen. Enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you.
Yes, the thing I really learned from that is I'm going to need to watch that again. One thing, apologies a little bit about the audio, but hopefully it didn't ruin your enjoyment too much there. I have Talia here. Hey, Talia. They were simple calculations. I think you're on mute now. It's your turn to be on mute. It's catching round here. She's been telling me, you're on mute, and then she's forgotten.
Hope you enjoy it. I have been prepare it for 1 year for the solutions.
1 year, cool.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite one? Sorry, carry on.
The solution that with the help of ChatGPT, because they are much better than my solution.
Are you looking forward to Copilot as well?
Yeah, I hope to.
Now, so we've not had any serious questions that haven't been answered in the meantime. I think the main thing I'd say is, what would be your top tip of working with ChatGPT in Excel then, Talia?
Yep. Sometimes you may need to give it more details so that it can give you correct results. Sometimes if the problem is too complicated, like the case of mine, then you need to learn a bit more about that tool. So you need to have human experts to help you to find out the errors. Yep. That's my tips. Yeah.
No, thank you. Look, you put a lot of work into that. Talia is our resident guru on all things Final Friday Fix and Monday morning mulling. So if you haven't checked out the Final Friday Fix on our website, I will put it up in the Q&A in a few moments' time. But do check out the blogs in general, because there's loads of good stuff on Power Pivot, Power Query, Power BI. We're doing things on Excel for Mac, and it looks like we're going to be doing things on Copilot and ChatGPT, although I haven't told the team about that yet, so they're going to all scream at me, what? But we'll be going there. Talia CAO, thank you very, very much. She's been an avid viewer behind the scenes and has been watching a lot. She loves this stuff, don't you? This is your third Excel Virtually Global now. So thank you very much for being along.